Hoop City with Paul Sir. I know, again, I'm not Paul Sir. I can only do my best imitation of him. I'm Josh Fenwick. I'm his producer. I'm also guest hosting today and next week on Hoop City with Paul Sir. Thank you so much for joining me. Get in on the conversation. Text line 833-401-1440. And if you want to see this next segment, because there is some visuals involved, you can find us on Sports 1440 AM on YouTube, Sports 1440 on X, or you can find us on Instagram, Sports 1440 AM. It's going to be a tougher watch on Instagram as it goes vertical, but you can find us anywhere that you can stream video. I promise. I promise you. So I do want to talk about, this is probably the most compelling storyline in the NBA right now, which is who's going to be the MVP, because it is really a tight race, and NBA Twitter will try to tell you so many different things. And so, I mean, is it between Luka and SGA? Is it between Jokic and Luka? Is it between Wemby and SGA, or Wemby and Jokic? You know, there's so many questions that have to get answered. And so, again, here we are. Our wonderful digital producer, Josh Fenwick, made up these graphics from Hoopology. Great follow on X, and a fantastic website. They have data going back, I believe it's 7 years, or maybe even longer, because you can find certain things like 2016 Steph and whatever. And it's for efficiency and points and on-off numbers, and you can find scatter plots and all these great things where teams rank in comparison historically. And it's really in depth. I think it's one of my go-to websites right now. So I want to lead us off with Luka Doncic, who again has been on an absolute tear. Now, this is not perfect, the Hoopology website, because for me personally, I like per 100 the best. Per 100 possessions, it gives to me, like, it's right around the pace of the NBA. So eventually, you know, this player does get to 100 possessions. This is per 75. Maybe that's better because it's more condensed, but I think the longer you can stretch things out, the better. Also, per 36 is way better than per 48, because nobody plays 48 minutes in the NBA anymore. 36 is really like the average. I mean, SGA averages 33 minutes a game. So here we are. Luka is the number one scorer in the league currently, and these are his on-off points with teammates divided by their minutes that they play on the court with Luka versus off. And so his number one teammate in minutes, surprisingly, is DeAndre Ayton, who also, shout out to DeAndre Ayton, has not taken a three-pointer this year. But you can see the categories we have are points, true shooting, paint field goal percentage, three-point percentage, mid-range field goal percentage, and assists, the assist numbers on and off. That could be a percentage, but just, do these teammates have the ball more, or do they have the ball less, and where is the ball going from these guys? And so Luka obviously also leads the league in usage percentage, I believe, and so he has the ball a lot. So the assist numbers are way down for everyone on his team, which also makes sense because you want the best player to have the ball in their hands, and his assist numbers are way up. But the efficiency doesn't really get much better with him on the floor across all three zones. The paint field goal percentage, it does get way better. I mean, DeAndre Ayton, he's shooting a better like 6.5% in the paint when Luka's on the ice, or on the floor, because he opens things up so much. But even like the efficiency totally of the team is down when he's on the court. They're taking less shots and they're making less shots. That's a problem to me. Also, true shooting percentage, that's my favorite percentage. I think it's better than effective field goal percentage because this takes into account everything, and I like the math that goes into it better. And with effective field goal percentage, they times free throws by half a point, but with true shooting, it's 0.44 because not all free throws are created equal. They're not all and ones, or they're not all, shooting fouls where they miss the shot. Like, there are techs in there and things of the such. So to me, true shooting is a better form of getting you a player's efficiency. And so sort of across the board, players scoring is down, but I think this is the big one. Austin Reeves, when he's on the court with Luka, he really does fall to that second option. Technically third option. He averages 19 points a game when he's on the court with Luka. When Luka is off the court and Austin Reeves is on, he's averaging a whopping 32 points. Austin Reeves is the second option on this Lakers team, which is insane because LeBron James is also on this team. But like LeBron's numbers, his true shooting is way better when Luka's on the court, and his paint field goal percentage. He gets a lot of paint looks when Luka's there. They can run some pick and rolls. He's super smart, so he can cut through the back. I love everything about LeBron James's game as a third option. He's a smart cookie, that guy, in case you guys didn't know. But to me, like the amount of red that I'm seeing on this is a bit of a problem, because when you're on the court and you're a player of Luka's ilk, you should be making teammates that much better. But to see all the red in here, and the only people that are really profiting are a rim runner like DeAndre Ayton and LeBron James, one of, if not the greatest player in NBA history. Maybe that's more of a testament to what the Lakers really are, and maybe they won't make a big run in the playoffs because they don't have all the help they need. I mean, I do think they're quite squishy on the inside, but like I can see Luka himself is so good. He's averaging 40 this month, which basically hasn't been done since James Harden in 2019. But this is a lot of recency. I think when you look back at the year as a whole, Austin Reeves has been really, really, really impressive when Luka and LeBron are out, and he's sort of willed the Lakers to a bunch of wins, and he can find his own shots. Whereas now he sort of falls into a Chris Bosh sort of look on the Heatles. It's like you got your spots. You sort of have to change your game when Luka is on the court, and I don't think like that's conducive to the way that the best look of the Lakers are. Now we're gonna move over here to the man, the myth, the legend, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the good Canadian boy, as he's known around my apartment. He's second in the league in scoring. The assist numbers again are down, but they're way down. But he's a good facilitator of the ball. The efficiency isn't really that much better for anyone else that's on the court. It's better for guys that really need it to be better. Lou Dort, his true shooting percentage is through the roof. Casey Wallace has taken no mid-ranges on the court with Luka Doncic. That's sort of or I guess he hasn't taken no mid-ranges. He has made no mid-ranges because Shai takes up so much of that area. And something that Paul and I have talked about a lot this season is how good Shai is at now getting to his spots and getting to his spots comfortably. And he's really good in that mid-range area. He sort of takes that away from a lot of other players. And even with him, but because the problem with the mid-range shot, and I love the mid-range shot, don't get me wrong, is that even when you're covering it, it doesn't open up that much space through the rest of the floor, depending on the defensive zone that you're playing against. Because if you're playing against a 3-2 zone, then they're probably going to collapse on you a little better, and then you get a good look in the corner. And so, like, the three-point numbers are a little better from the bad three-point shooters on the team. Like Lou Dort, who's a 30% three-point shooter, Casey Wallace, and Chet Holmgren, who are all 30% three-point shooters, shoot better. Chet is almost a 40% from three when Shai's on the floor with him. That's good. And this is a guy that's tall, and he does have that outside shot. And so I'm a fan of him opening it up from the three for the worst shooters, but then it sort of hinders a guy like a Jalen Williams, not J-Dub, Jalen Williams, the other one, the bench guy, who's really good, sort of hinders his ability to get more shots because they're more focused on covering him when Shai's on the floor because they don't want him getting a three-point shot. But it's good that his teammates are knocking it down. But again, SGA himself is so efficient. Like, we're talking 2016 Steph true shooting numbers on more points per game. And again, 2016 Steph won the MVP unanimously. So I think Shea also has it. I think Shea has the MVP locked up, unfortunately. I'm not saying I don't want to give it to him. I want to see Canada, succeed in the NBA. But I just don't know if I can do it. The next guy, now this is insane, and this is what I want to see. This is a lot of green. This is Nikola Jokic. He plays a lot of minutes for the Denver Nuggets, and he's still eligible for the MVP. I think if he misses 2 games, then he will be ineligible because he have his hyperextended knee, which is too bad. He elevates the bottom guys on the roster a lot more. You see it with like Christian Braun, who when Jokic is off the court, he averages 5.4 points per game. When Jokic is on the court, he finds this guy. He's a 15-point. We're talking about a 10-point jump. That's fantastic. Jamal Murray, who's really good by himself, is even better when Jokic is on the court. He does such a good job of finding these guys, and their efficiency numbers are way up. The only person that isn't up by like a significant margin is Jamal Murray, who's 3.5% worse in the paint. But like Cam Johnson, he's 20% better. Christian Braun, he's 37% better. Tim Hardaway Jr., he's 19% better. Like Aaron Gordon, he's 6% better, but they haven't got to spend a lot of time together. We're talking 509 minutes because Aaron Gordon's been so injured this season. But again, made to play with Jokic. And then the 3-point percentage for everybody is really up, except for big-time shooter Cam Johnson. And Christian Braun, who's not really a 3-point threat, but Cam Johnson is, in case you don't remember him on the Suns, where he was absolutely sick from 3, and a big reason that Suns team went to the finals. But everyone's efficiency numbers are really, really up, and that's what Jokic does best. He is a floor raiser for the rest of his team, and you can see like how poor the team is with him off the court. And you really see the deficiencies, which is a big problem with the Nuggets when you think they're gonna come out of the West, because if Jokic isn't a guy who's playing 48 minutes a game or 42 minutes a game in these defensive battles in the NBA playoffs, then it sort of spells trouble for the Nuggets, especially if Jamal Murray is not having an on game. So those are the two things that really like work for him. However, luckily for Jokic, it's a regular season award, so you don't really have to worry about what they're going to look like in the playoffs. And then the other thing is he's a center averaging a triple-double who's leading the league in rebounds and assists, which I don't think has been done since Wilt Chamberlain. There's a lot of talk about Wilt Chamberlain this season about people doing things that nobody's done since Wilt. And when you're put in that category, you're like, man, this is historic. Unfortunately, I think all 4 of these guys have been doing stuff that, since Wilt or never done before. Luka's setting all sorts of records with the Lakers, who have a very storied history. One, a history with Wilt, and then you have guys like Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kobe Bryant, and he's doing things that none of those guys have ever done with the team. So that's very impressive in and of itself. On our next slide here, we have Jaylen Brown, who I would have to put like 5th on my MVP ballot, unfortunately. But what he's doing in Boston is unreal. I mean, this is a guy who just a few seasons ago we were still making fun of for not being able to dribble with his left hand, and he was in the NBA. And now he's a guy averaging 30 points a night on a Celtics team that we thought was going to be rebuilding or they were going to have an off year, much like the Pacers have this year with no Tyrese Halliburton. And he said, you know what? No, I'm not going to let that happen. And started averaging 30 points a game, increased his efficiency. And the only problem is that the good players on his team get significantly worse. I'm not really worried about Derek White. They spend so much time on the floor together. Derek White's job is to lock things down. He's averaging 16.1 points per game per 75 possessions with Jaylen Brown on the floor. Peyton Pritchard, 16, and they've played. Peyton Pritchard and Derek White are within 6 minutes of each other with Jaylen Brown on the floor. So he is most successful when those guys are on the floor together. Now, even though their points are down, their efficiency in the paint is way up. And Derek White, way better mid-range shooter when he's on the floor. Unfortunately, he doesn't really bump up. Jaylen Brown doesn't bump up the three-point percentage for all these guys because he's really the only perimeter threat except for Peyton Pritchard. When Peyton Pritchard's there or Sam Hauser, like, these guys can shoot the skin off the ball. But other than that, they don't traditionally have to worry about them when Jaylen Brown's on the floor, because Jaylen Brown, again, has a high usage percentage. Jason Tatum's come back. When JT and Jaylen Brown are on the floor, Jaylen Brown elevates Jason Tatum. Now, that shouldn't be a surprise because they've been playing together for, what would it be now, almost 10 years? Like, it's really weird to think about a year where, like, Jason Tatum is supposed to be the franchise guy for the Celtics, and he's playing second fiddle to Jaylen Brown, who, again, could not dribble with his left hand a couple seasons ago. What he's done for the Celtics in a year where we thought they were going to be at worst probably a play-in team, and at best going to be like a 6 seed, what he's done for the Celtics is absolutely unreal. But when you go up against history like Victor Wembanyama and Nikola Jokic and SGA, it makes it really hard to say, wow, this guy is the most valuable player in the league. Sorry, Michael Wilbon, I know that's who you had. Now, this is my winner. This is Victor Wembanyama. There's a lot of green on here. Everyone else's points are down, but their efficiency goes way through the roof because of that gravity I talked about in our opening segment. He has the gravity on the pick and roll, and I forget who put the video out, my apologies, but they broke down his gravity and said, well, the Spurs are generating the most corner three-point shots in NBA history, and that's because Wemby is dragging 3 guys to the rim with him when he hits a pick and roll, which is literally the easiest play in basketball. And if every time that he sets a pick and he starts rolling to the basket, he has 3 guys on him, that opens the floor up so much. And it's one of those things where, like, numbers don't really do justice to what it is Victor Wembanyama gives to the Spurs, as well as being the best two-way player in the league. Even though he's not from this planet, quote, Jaylen Brown, he opens so much stuff up. The paint, like Steph Castle, who is a good player, the second best player, third best player on the Spurs, and is not a good three-point shooter, but is really good around the rim. If he's shooting, which this is true, 15.8% better per 75 possessions when Victor Wembanyama is on the court with him, that is such a huge advantage, because now all of a sudden the Spurs, Mitch Johnson is doing a great job with this. They're passing the ball around so much, much like the Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker Spurs. They have such good ball movement. If Wemby is dragging 3 defenders with him to one side of the court, all of a sudden Steph Castle just has to cut, or De'Aaron Fox just has to cut, or Julian Champagny just has to cut, and they get an easy 2-point lay-in. Like, that is such a huge advantage for the Spurs. And, like, obviously the easy stop is, well, we got to stop sending 3 defenders with Wemby. But then what happens? We just lob the ball up to Wemby basically, and either he slams it home and catches the lob midair, or he just puts his hand up, which is about 4 feet taller than anyone else in the NBA can jump, and goes, all right, I have this, and I'll just lay it in, or he can kick it out to the corner because he still has a defender on him, and then a nice open 3-point look. Wemby is just like he's such an eye test guy that if people aren't watching Spurs games, it makes sense why he would not take this home this year. But like he said, with the comments that he made, hey, like, defense is 50% of the game, and I'm going to do my best to, by the end of the season, make sure it's not a debate anymore. So Victor Wembanyama is my MVP because he elevates everyone else on the team in an efficiency way, and also does so much stuff that you can only tell with your eyes. So anyways, that was Josh Fenwick's MVP breakdown in the NBA. Text us, 833-401-1440, if you have thoughts on what it was I was saying. Coming up on the big program, we're going to be joined by Andrew Schlecht of The Athletic, covers the OKC Thunder. We'll see what who he thinks the MVP should be, talk about NBA expansion, and so much more. This is Hoop City with Paul Sir on your sports leader, Sports 1440. Hoop City with Paul Sir, guest host Josh Fenwick's in the Sports 1440 studios here in West Edmonton Mall. Text line 833-401-1440. This is an interview I'm very excited for. Not Dan Devine. My apologies. Andrew Schlecht from The Athletic, covers the Oklahoma City Thunder, also does the newsletter for The Athletic, I believe. Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time this morning. Welcome to Hoop City with Paul Sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, work at The Athletic, you cover the Oklahoma City Thunder, correct?
Yes, I do.
All right, so SGA, we know what a historic season he's having. Is he your MVP in your eyes?
I think when you look at the season overall, he is the MVP. Now, the Thunder have been strange this season. It's almost you have these different sections of their season. You have the 24-1 start where it felt like he's like imminently the MVP. Is this team going to challenge for 74 wins, or what's going to happen with this team? They fall off a little bit, some of it due to injury. They lose to the Spurs 3 times, and it feels like the sky is falling. And then they've kind of rebounded over this last stretch where they had a 12-game winning streak, and they beat a lot of really good teams. I do think that when you look at the season overall, that Shea has had the best season of anybody on the best team. I think if you look at the last 25 to 30 games, it's probably Wemby. If you look at the last 15 games, you could probably consider Luka Doncic. But if you're looking at the season in totality, I think that Shea has been consistently the best player in the league so far. So, yes, I do think that Shea is the deserving MVP.
Hey, you know what? As a Canadian, that makes me very happy to hear that he might be going back-to-back.
Yeah.
You do bring up the 24-1 start with the Thunder, though, and I think an important thing about that is that Jalen Williams, he was unavailable for basically that entire stretch, and then he came back, and the Thunder sort of started to struggle. Is J-Dub sort of coming back into the guy that you saw last season, or what's his effect on this OKC team that maybe makes them look a touch more human?
Yeah, so he's been back for 3 games, and when he first came back from his injury, from his wrist, he had surgery on his wrist. His wrist wasn't right yet, and he wasn't shooting threes really. His handle was not what it was. Defensively, he was still there. He's actually really progressed as a passer this season, just because he's just had to. But I would say now, with him returning, he's starting to look more like himself. He told me yesterday that he feels more like himself, that his wrist feels back 100%. He feels like he's trusting his leg a little bit more. I think perhaps, whenever he did come back, it was a pretty big adjustment for the team because he's someone that is going to take a lot of shots, going to hold a lot of possessions. But overall, without J-Dub, they're not going to win the NBA title again. And so they need to reintegrate him back into the team, slide everybody back into their other roles, and get some rhythm going into the playoffs. But I do think that when he did initially return, just the fact that he wasn't himself was a part of that, a part of their struggle. And part of it, too, is San Antonio is really, really good. And there's no shame in losing to San Antonio, even though they lost to them 3 times. There's no shame in that. That's a really good basketball team, and somebody that they're a puzzle to figure out. Wemby is really difficult to deal with. If you also go back and look at some of those Spurs games, the Spurs shot the ball really, really well, probably unsustainably well against the Thunder in those games. But I do think that overall, Dub as a versatile defender, as a secondary ball handler, as their second best scorer overall, as a guy who gets them playing faster, they just have to have him, playing at his peak if they want to repeat.
Yeah, hey, it makes a lot of sense to me. Hoop City with Paul Sir here on Sports 1440, joined by Andrew Schlecht of The Athletic, covers the Oklahoma City Thunder. You bring up going for back-to-back, going for a repeat, and the Spurs losses and everything. What do you think the one deficiency of this team could be that would cost them a second title?
I think it's their offense will go through these lulls, and it feels like they do it collectively where they just can't shoot it. We saw that a little bit in Boston. We saw it in the first half last night against Chicago, where they just can't make threes. Now, go back and look at their percentages in the playoffs last year. For the most part, they were very bad, and they have like a pretty big margin for error just because their defense is that good and Shea is that good. But I do think it's going to be shooting. They have added Jared McCain, who has been stellar since he got to the Thunder. Isaiah Joe is a much improved player and a guy who I think can stay on the floor a little bit more come playoff time as well. But I do think outside shooting will be their Achilles heel. If they don't repeat, they lose in the conference finals, they lose in the NBA finals, I think that we will look at the three-point shooting as probably the culprit there for them. Other than that, I do think that it's not only that, but it's who's taking the threes. You know, I think Boston did an amazing job the other night of making guys like Luguentz Dort and Alex Caruso be the ones to take the open threes. And sometimes Caruso will go through stretches where he hits 50% from three. He'll also go through stretches where he's hitting 15% from three. And so just the streakiness of those guys, could be the difference in another NBA title.
It's interesting that you bring up the outside shooting, because the feeling I get when I watch Thunder games is their defensive rebounding. I think when a guy like Chet, and I know Hartenstein's been in and out of the lineup a lot this year, they don't really have that guy that can really crash the boards, which is what I saw when they were losing to, or why games were so close with the Nuggets, or why they were losing to the Spurs, is because they have those bigger bodies that can sort of crash the offensive glass.
The rebounding has definitely been something that's been a problem. It's not been as big a problem this season. Hartenstein fixes a lot of that. And I actually think that Chet, and you can even back this up with some numbers, but he's been a better rebounder this season, period. Now, Chet did not play well against San Antonio, and that's something that he's got to kind of level up if they do, in fact, match up with them in the playoffs. But that used to be like their biggest problem, but I think it's been less of a problem this season.
Oh, all right. I just want to sort of go to the NBA as a whole, because big news like this week, NBA expansion, it's officially happening. Seattle and Vegas getting bids for teams. I was wondering if you think this is the right time for the NBA to expand.
Yeah, I think that inevitably they were going to. One, I think they want an influx of cash. If you could just bring in $15 billion into your business, would you say no to that? I don't think so. And the owners certainly aren't going to say no to that. They voted for it at the Board of Governors meeting. Like they all want that inflow of cash. Part of me just wonders if there's just bigger things to solve for the NBA rather than adding more teams to it. I do think that clearly, like the biggest thing for the NBA right now is just making money, which has always kind of been the thing with this league. But if it were me, I would be trying to solve the problem of like they play too many games, or maybe even you adjust the minutes of the games, because I just think like the product itself would be so much better if there were less games. And I wish that they would take a look at that. I know because this has to do with money, and the reason that they wouldn't go less games is because it would take money out of people's pockets. But to me, like the overall product could be better if there were less games. As far as like timing for expansion, it's probably fine. These teams are going to be really bad though. And I think, if you're a Western Conference team, you actually might be excited about that, because you're going to add two bottom-of-the-barrel teams to the Western Conference, and you're probably going to boot the Minnesota Timberwolves to the East. So I do think that teams will like that. But we'll see. I do think that there's enough talent in the league, but is it going to be spread evenly? No. We look at a team like the Brooklyn Nets right now, and there's just not much there for that team. And these expansion teams could look worse than that. And so I'll be really, really curious to see like how long it takes these teams to get on their feet. Because like you look at the Bobcats, who were like one of the last expansion teams, that team never really got it together. Like that version of the team, it took them so long to get their footing. And some of it's going to be who's the owner, who do they select for the general manager. All of that's really going to matter. But I think people could actually look at after the expansion happens, and you look a year down the road, and it's like, why did we do this? I think that those think pieces can write themselves today.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. I was wondering, do you have an idea of who might be the best player that's available in these expansion drafts? Like, do the Memphis Grizzlies use this as a way to maybe get out of the Ja Morant business or anything like that?
Yeah, that would be really interesting. There's a lot of players, so we have to think about it in this will happen in 2028. So I think like Ja Morant will need a new contract by then. You look at like the guys for the Sacramento Kings, like they're going to need those guys will either be off their current deals or need contract extensions, so they won't be eligible really for it. Joel Embiid is one where if they left him unprotected, would an expansion team take him on? I mean, I think the answer would probably be no. As far as like the best player, I would probably look at like who are the teams that are the most stacked, because if you look back at 2004 when the Bobcats did their expansion draft, the best player they selected was Gerald Wallace. And Gerald was on the Sacramento Kings, who had a really, really deep roster at the time. That was a really good Kings team. And I would look at the Thunder. I would look at San Antonio. Not only do you have their current rosters, but like the Thunder have, 2 draft picks in this next draft. They're going to have, good players available. So it's probably going to be one of those guys like Nikola Topic. I don't know if they would leave him unprotected. But I would say like he could be a guy that's left unprotected just because the Thunder don't have a ton of information about him. You could look at even like a Jared McCain or somebody like that if the Thunder don't give him an extension. So it would probably be somebody like that. I'm not necessarily suggesting that those guys will be unprotected, but it'll be a player like that where it's the super stacked teams that need to keep their core together or need to keep their rotation intact, and they're going to have to like leave somebody with potential, kind of like the Gerald Wallace piece off of there. So that would be my guess as to what that will look like. But it's still, it's a couple years down the road, and the league changes so fast that it's just really hard to predict.
No, absolutely. All right, this is the last one for you, Andrew. I just want to know, like, there's a lot of discourse with this year, particularly after the injury to Cade Cunningham with a collapsed lung, where you fall on the 65-game rule to be eligible for awards in the NBA.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to this coin. I think some people, obviously you can look at the Cade Cunningham piece of it and be like, man, this sucks. Why would we do this? But also look at Jokic and Wemby, who are playing a lot of basketball right now, like 2 of the best players in the NBA, who, if this rule didn't exist, we would not be seeing this much Victor Wembanyama right now. Yeah. We would not be seeing this much Nikola Jokic. So there's certainly an element to like, hey, this is working. We are actually seeing more of these guys than we would have previously. It's just a shame that this happened to Cade. Now, any sort of rule like this is going to have unintended consequences that are going to be bad for somebody. And this year it happens to be Cade. It would be somebody else if it wasn't Cade. I think overall what they set out to accomplish is working. I think players are trying to play as much as they can. there's always unfortunate things that happen in the league, with players, like what happened with Cade.
Yeah.
And you'd like to see them maybe make an exception for Cade to make an All-NBA team. Like, maybe one thing they could do is like keep the 65-game rule, but you can't make the first team All-NBA. Like, maybe you could make second team All-NBA, which would still, get a lot of guys to their contract qualifiers. And lucky for Cade, like, he has his contract extension. He's not, this isn't going to affect his bottom dollar, which is really good, but it will affect reward stuff, and it's just kind of the unfortunate nature of it. And I think maybe you tweak it, but overall, I would say, like, the 65-game rule has worked for the most part. Like, it's getting guys on the court more.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think even someone that was really the main driving force behind implementing this rule was Kawhi Leonard, and he's playing unreal basketball down the stretch right now, and a lot of basketball as well, and that's really, really fun to watch.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. Thanks so much for cutting some time out. This was great.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right, great. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the games.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Bye. That was Andrew Schlecht from The Athletic here on Hoop City with Paul Sir on your sports leader, Sports 1440. We're going to go take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll wrap up the show, talk a little more NBA, talk a little NC2A, and so much more. So keep it locked here on Sports 1440. Welcome back to Hoop City with Paul Sir. I'm Josh Fenwick, sitting in for Paul today and next week. Thank you so much for joining me. Coming up on Sports 1440, it is the pre- and post-game show hosted by Andrew Walker. And Josh Fenwick Day here on Sports 1440 continues as I will be riding shotgun with him, producing the program as well. We just had Andrew Schlecht on from The Athletic. Very, very great insight. Covers the Oklahoma City Thunder. And we talked about NBA expansion. Manny texted in, he said, we're texting back and forth about me riding solo today, and then he said, someday you should quit your night job, haha. Manny, good news. I already did. This is my one job now. We talked about NBA expansion and Seattle, the city of Seattle and Las Vegas having bids, and their prices being somewhere around the $8 billion to $10 billion range, and whether or not this is the right time to do it. Regardless, and also depending on when the bids get in and accepted, we could see the expansion team sooner than usual. So I think the interesting part of this is Seattle is probably going to be the Supersonics again. There might be some legal things that surround that stop them from having the trademark of the Seattle Supersonics, but I'm sure that will get worked out between the ownership group that will buy the Seattle team and the owners of the trademark around that. So the interesting part about the Seattle Supersonics is, will Kevin Durant end his career as a Sonic? Because obviously he's on the Rockets right now, and he signed a 2-year extension with them that would end after the season of 27-28. That would be right in line-ish with when the Supersonics or the Seattle team theoretically would be coming back. And for one of the greatest players in NBA history, obviously, like, it would be sort of a cool storybook ending to his career if he ended his career with the team that drafted him, even though, we know all that happened with the Sonics. They moved to Oklahoma City, and then they draft Russell Westbrook and James Harden. They drafted 3 MVPs, absolutely unreal, and are now NBA finalists, NBA champions, NBA finalists not long after they became the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, yeah, I think it sort of works out all the way around that, like, yeah, Kevin Durant, if he doesn't force his way out of Houston and just sort of stays on his, 20 point per game trajectory that he's on, and, just being a good scorer and sometime taking the second option role or the third option role on this Rockets team, which I think they will probably want. I think it'd be cool for him to go back. And obviously, again, He's a good scorer. That isn't really going to leave you. It didn't even leave Carmelo at the end of his career. Like, he was putting up buckets with the Trailblazers and things like that. I mean, right now, Kevin Durant, he's 37. He'll be 38 in September, which means he'd be turning 40 that year that he'd be a free agent. And I can't imagine he hanging him up around 40, although, like, you know what? I've been wrong, but I think with the history of now LeBron James and Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers in sports, retiring earlier isn't really a thing that happens isn't really going to be a thing happening moving forward when you're of such an elite talent like a Kevin Durant. I mean, or Udonis Haslem. Shout out to my boy. And I really think that would be the perfect way to end Durant's career. I mean, I know it's filled with controversy, and these last couple years have been, or I guess this decade has just been him going from team to team, trying to win another championship, authentically, I'll put in quotations, because we know everything that happened when he went to Golden State. Oh, he joined the 73-9 Warriors. Like, this is the weakest move by a superstar of all time, whatever. And I think he's trying to correct his legacy. But I think if in the first year of expansion, and Andrew said it, and I totally agree with him, that the teams would be bad. They'd be maybe worse than the Brooklyn Nets are now. It'd be nice for the NBA and an NBA expansion team to land a superstar, even if it is an aging superstar at that, and he wants to put that nice bookend on his career. So that's something to look to. If we look to today, the NBA slate of games is pretty nice. I tried my darndest to get a San Antonio Spurs guest on today. It was really tough, though, because they're on the road in Milwaukee, and tip-off is at 1 p.m., so will the Spurs just continue doing what they've been doing since the beginning of the year? If you listen to this today and only listen to this today, you would think I'm the biggest Spurs fan in the world. I am a Raptors fan, so thank you for giving me Kawhi Leonard in 2019, and it's the greatest sporting year of my life. But I love what they do down there, their culture, the fact that their superstar cares so much about everything. So that's getting going at 1 o'clock. They're playing against Milwaukee. This seems like an easy win for the Spurs. I mean, Giannis is not going to be in the game. He's, quote, Doc says Giannis is progressing but not yet healthy. So we'll see what happens there. Also in Milwaukee, Ryan Rollins is having an absolutely unbelievable season. I don't think it's getting talked about enough. And he's currently, I think, the 5th leading betting favorite or so for the most improved player. He's a 2nd-round pick, Ryan Rollins, and he is doing some absolutely insane stuff. I think he's their leading scorer. I'm going to go pull his basketball reference up right now, but he's a betting favorite behind 4 first-round picks, and he was a 2nd-round pick. He was taken 44th overall by the Atlanta Hawks. But this year, in 70 games, he's averaging 32 minutes. He's shooting 47% from the field, 41% from 3. I mean, he's shooting 78% from the free throw line. Last season, he was averaging 6.2 points. This year, he's averaging 17.1. And I think him being behind 4 former first-round picks is an absolute joke. This is what the most improved player was for, is for the guys that were doing nothing and improving to the quality of NBA player that Ryan Rollins now is, and putting up good numbers, especially based on draft position. He's a 2nd-round pick. Like, Malcolm Brogdon was a 2nd-round pick and won. He won Rookie of the Year. My apologies. But I think the most improved player is now sort of turning into, you weren't an all-star last year, but you were an all-star this year. Like, Pascal Siakam is a great example of a most improved player. I know he was a 1st-round pick. He was a very late 1st-round pick, and he was a guy that spent time in the G League and didn't have a lot of minutes, and then became a starting power forward in the NBA and wasn't good. And then the next year, all of a sudden, was putting up 18 points per game and almost a double-double. Like, that is what that is for. And I think Ryan Rollins should be an absolute shoo-in for the most improved player this year, and he's not. So that's incredibly sad to me. And then again, just a great slate of games. Actually, I lied to you. They're not a great slate of games. The first two are good games. The Detroit, Minnesota, they're playing at 3:30. Minnesota, I think they're an absolute wagon. Detroit, can they stay afloat with no Cade? Cade had a collapsed lung, and I was racking my brain trying to figure out what athlete had a collapsed lung and came back really fast. And then I remembered it was TJ Watt. He had a collapsed lung. He played for the Steelers like the next week. And I know it, like, football and basketball are very different, and basketball is a lot more of an endurance sport. But man, TJ Watt, I think, is an animal. And then another game today, the Charlotte Hornets, Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers are in Charlotte. I love the Hornets game so much. If you have not watched a Charlotte Hornets game, the headline that's really taken over is that Melo is averaging his lowest points per game, assists per game, rebounds per game, but he's shooting the ball so much better. And the Hornets themselves are way better. If you had told me before the season started that LaMelo Ball would evolve into a winning basketball player, I would have called you crazy and sent you to the nut house. Because never, ever in my wildest dreams would I ever have guessed that he would be a winning basketball player. We saw the first 5 years of his career. It was good stats, bad team guy. Looked like he'd be another Bradley Beal or something like that, Zach LaVine. And now the Hornets are winning. And I put a lot of that into Brandon Miller is now taking it to the cup a lot more. He's not trying to be an outside presence. He's not forcing outside shots. He's just taking it to the rack over and over and over again. And then I also give it to Moussa Diabate. I had this really interesting, if you follow us on Instagram, Sports 1440 AM, I was doing these things called, I will continue to do these things called the Basketball Report. And I had one all done called What's Happening in Charlotte. And I gave a lot of credit to Moussa Diabate because the lineup of Moussa Diabate, Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, who's going to be the Rookie of the Year, and I forget who the fifth player is, but alas, they were the second highest scoring team per 100 possessions, or had the second highest point differential between opponents in over 100 minutes played. I think that was fair. They were outscoring teams by 24 points. The only lineup that was better, and this was before Bam's 83, was a lineup that the Miami Heat had rolling. And that's because Moussa Diabate is such a good defender. He is absolutely unreal defender. He's an inside presence. And the fact that the Clippers could have had that and they don't, and they shipped him off he went off to the Hornets, is really too bad for the Clippers because they could use some center depth. But I think this guy is a huge integral piece to the success that the Hornets are having. He's such an inside presence. The opponent's field goal percentage just drops by 5%. For an entire team's field goal percentage to drop by 5% when a 6'11" guy is on the court is almost unfathomable to me. And then for it to go up 5% as much as it does when he's off, it really speaks to that he's the defensive anchor of this team. And I believe now he's started more games than he's come off the bench for, so he can't win the Sixth Man of the Year award. But I would absolutely have had him as the Sixth Man of the Year before that happened. So I really like what's going on in Charlotte. Watch for them to make some noise in the playoffs, especially they've had some good brawls with the Pistons this year, literal and metaphorically. But if the Pistons don't have Cade going into the playoffs and they manage to sort of sneak into this 8 seed, or even sneak into a home game or a regular playoff spot, the 6 seed, and they would be taking on the New York Knicks, I think that'd be an extremely fun game. But as of right now, they're still a game and a half back of the Hawks, who are holding that 6 seed spot. tight for dear life, essentially. There's lots of good happening in the NBA. It's quality ball that's being played, and I know it sort of gets overshadowed this time of year due to March Madness, rightfully so, because March Madness is one of the best sporting events of the year, and it really kicks off the greatest sporting stretch of the year. I think you just watch some NBA and appreciate the greatness that you get to see. The song that you're hearing right now, it's a song for David. It was written by Paul's son, Ben, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. He wrote this song. It's called A Song for David, wrote it for David Finkelman, who lost his life, and then Ben unfortunately lost his life just a couple of years later. And Paul plays this song so that you guys just are kind to people. You know, remember to be kind to people, because you don't know what it is they're going through, and you don't know the situation in their life. So just walk through life treating people with kindness, because that's always the way to go. So, yeah. Shout out to Paul and his family. I always wish the best for them. Hope they're living it up in California, IA. Thank you so much for joining Hoop City with Paul Sir today. Obviously, in case you didn't know, this is my first time hosting any big-time program here on Sports 1440. I'll be hosting next week. Hopefully, I won't be riding solo, but we'll see where we come out. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful week on and off the court. I'm Josh Fenwick for Paul Sir on Hoop City with Paul Sir. Keep living it up on and off the court on your sports leader, Sports 1440.